Welcome to Project Management Hardcore Episode 7. Nice to have you back. Here we go. We're going to go over the problem childs today, the problem people during the projects, and how to handle them. I've got about 7 or 8 of them I'll talk about. Of course, there are others, and plus we'll talk about the attitude you need to have during the project and how to get by that. Thanks for the reviews, and thanks for we've got folks listening overseas, Japan, the Czech Republic, Belgium, Germany, Iran, England, Ireland, and of course the States, all over the States. I really appreciate it, and really thanks for listening. So, today we're going to start with the problems, and then in Episode 8 we'll talk about how to conduct meetings and facilitation, etc. Remember that the entire project, you've got to be focused on the end of the project, the products you're going to deliver, and everything in between, all the problems, anything that comes up. Don't let anything throw you off. You just keep moving forward. Remember the last episode I quoted, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. So regardless what comes up, regardless who you have problems with, you roll right over it and keep going and keep going. A good quote I heard, and I don't know who to attribute it to, but you'll never reach your destination if you stop and throw stones at every barking dog. That's a good thing to think about. You'll never reach your destination if you stop and throw stones at every barking dog. And you'll have lots of barking dogs during your meetings, during the project. Remember I told you get a good core team so you could all decide what to do with the barking dogs together. And I love dogs, so I don't like that saying that much. I'll stop and pet every barking dog, but that's not the idea of this saying, of course. That's a good way to think. I've taken many Tony Robbins courses. Actually, all of them that he had about 10 years ago. Took the first course, I think it was 3 days, and then I took 4 or 5 of them. They were a week each in Hawaii. Twice during his courses, you do the fire walk. And one of the things that they teach you is you see yourself on the other side of the coals. He teaches you many other things, so obviously don't do it yourself unless you're trained, and you're taught by an expert like Tony. But that's one of the ideas, and that's what I'm saying here. You see yourself at the end of the project. The product's all done and everything is done, so you keep going full speed ahead, regardless of any of the barking dogs that come up during the projects. So, the first thing, a list of, we've got, I call it the barking dog, and then we'll talk about the know-it-all, the critic, the person whose glass is always half empty, people who are undependable, they procrastinate all the time, give some excuse all the time. And then those in meetings or in work sessions that just want to go home. So we'll talk about all of those. Some of the questions that I've come up with, or I usually ask during sessions. So let's talk about the barking dog that comes up. This is somebody who, during any session, he's always got something to say, or she's always got something to say every minute, but it doesn't help you progress forward. You're not moving along. And an easy statement, how can we move forward? So when people are arguing about something, or something went wrong and they're trying to place blame, I usually at that point say, we can talk about this for hours, but nothing good is going to come of it, so let's all think about how can we move forward? Or what do we have to do to deliver the product? What steps do we have to take to deliver the product? I'm giving you a bunch of different examples, different ideas. You can say it any way you want. We all have one goal: to deliver the product, or this or that. Nothing else matters. Who has an idea? Who can think of how to move forward? So you can cut all the negative chatter out. People are never going to say that it's their fault. People are never going to take the blame. So you got to move beyond that. You got to stop that discussion. How do we solve this? How do we get to the next step? Anybody have any ideas? Thanks for your input. Now let's move on. So you're trying to get beyond the barking dog. You're trying to get beyond that. You don't want to focus on that and spend your time on that, okay, or throw stones at it, because it's not going to get you your deliverables. It's not going to get you to the end of your project. Another way, I understand your concern. What are your suggestions to move forward? So you can tell that to the barking dog. What are your suggestions to move forward? Make them feel good about themselves. Make them feel, okay, now they can add something that will help the project move on. I hear you, but we have to plan for the next steps. What do you suggest? I thank you for your comments, but we need to move on, so we will need to take this offline. So take it offline. Sometimes you'll find folks who won't stop. So at that point, take it offline. So you say, let's take it offline. Now, let's hit the next thing in the agenda. And that's one of the key things in a meeting, in a working meeting, have an agenda. So then you can focus everybody on the next step, what you're doing next, and move them away from arguing about something or blaming somebody else. The next person you have is the know-it-all, the person who knows everything, has every answer, and plus tries to steamroll over everybody else. They want their way, or their way is right. They don't listen to anybody else. No matter what the opinions are of someone else, it doesn't make a difference. They have no respect for those. They have one perspective, and that's it. And sometimes they're intimidating, they're aggressive, and most of the time they speak with authority way beyond their position, right? And they try to disempower everybody else, make them feel like whatever they say, doesn't make a difference. They know everything. And they may cite things that have nothing to do with it, or they may argue. But with those folks, you might have to give them some time to run out of steam. Rein them in, tell them, let's take this offline. But don't get into an argument. Focus on the agenda. Tell them what the next steps are. And show them that you've heard them. You're practicing active listening skills. And you can even straight out ask them to consider input from others. You can restate others' opinions. Or you can look at someone else, say, okay, give us your side again. Let us hear that. I've done that many times where I've said, okay, let's hear that side. Now, just to be clear, give me your perspective again so that everybody in the group hears that again and they can decide. Because sometimes the know-it-all tries to intimidate everybody and they don't want to allow someone else to give their opinion again, right? You should have ground rules during it, so that's another way to stop the know-it-all. Refer to ground rules, right? And don't let them bully. Call on other people. Say, okay, we've heard your side. Now let's hear this other side. Let's hear this other perspective. Let's hear this other opinion. You can think of it as sides, but I think you are always better saying, let's hear this other perspective, or let's hear this other opinion. So another language you don't want to use is what I just did. This is, let's hear another side, because that puts people, all of a sudden they're in opposition to each other, right? So also you can remind that person that, we have to vet things. We all have to agree. We all have to get, to the same results. So the know-it-all is it's a pain, but these are ways of dealing with that person and moving on. And remember, focus on the other side of the coals. Focus on the end of the project. So don't get emotional. So regardless of what they say, never show emotions. Never get angry. Just, you have to work it through. These are techniques you have to use. It's like the techniques to build something or to to fix a bike or something like that, you're not going to get emotional. You're just going to figure out ways around it so you can change that tire. You can fix the gear. You can fix the chain, right? As soon as you get emotional, what happens? It stops. Same thing with a project. Don't let your emotions interfere. Be straight. Don't show anybody that, the only thing that matters to you should be to get to the end of the meeting and go through that agenda. The critic is the next one. And this is the person who's always, responds to everything with a quick negative response. How many times have you heard, oh, we've tried that before, it didn't work. We've done that before, it doesn't work. And all they do is dwell on, finding fault with everything you're going and with moving forward and with problem solving. And sometimes you ask them, okay, you give them an active role. Help us solve this problem, do this. And that doesn't work. They keep getting negative and are critical of everything. They can impact the morale of the group, of course. So usually I acknowledge their concerns, but I'm not going to get drawn into being negative, right? I don't argue with them. I don't get emotional about it. And I try to make optimistic statements. We'll get there. We can do it. We've done it before. It's been done before. Talk about past successes, right? I can also state that, this can be solved by all of us working together. Let's bring the issues to light. Or say, we'll incorporate that in the plan. It's a risk, but we'll figure out how to get around it. We'll try to mitigate that. And here are some of the steps we can take to overcome those sort of things. Of course, hopefully, try to pull it out of some other people to say the same thing. What do you think? We hear you, but what do you think? Any other opinions? What's another perspective? What's another way to look at this? What's another way to solve this? Always probe into the root causes and hold off offering solutions until everything has been defined and discussed. So as a facilitator, you don't want to give them the solutions. You want them to come to the solutions. You're facilitating them to get to the solutions. So again, just like the know-it-all and the critic, you've got to work these folks and try to get everything, keep people moving and get everybody else involved. The best way is to get the group involved so they can shut out the negativity. You want to get them to move on and focus on the end. Of course, you got the similar type of person where the glass is always half empty. Same sort of thing. They find fault with everybody and everything. Start blaming somebody else didn't do their job. Or somebody else should be fixing this. Somebody else should be doing this. They have a hard time actually engaging in problem-solving dialogue. And if you try to get them to do something, they just complain more. It's always half empty for them. And these people feel powerless to change things, right? And of course, at the same time, they don't want any responsibility. Remember that you have no idea what people are going through in life. They don't come in and tell you, they may feel stuck in their jobs. And they may get, because of that, they've got some emotional attitude towards everything. And, they want to really be heard, but they're not. They're passive aggressive. They're not being heard. They're just acting in a way that doesn't move things forward. May have had a death in the family. May be having problems with their children. Maybe there's a goal or something they didn't accomplish, and who knows? They could be getting sick. They could be hungry. There's so many different things that can change or can determine the way people are acting that you're not a psychiatrist. You can't figure it all out. You're goal is to keep things moving, keep them on the agenda, focus at the deliverables at the end of the project, right? So listen actively to complaints and don't appear impatient. Once again, don't let them see your emotions. Don't agree with them, but of course, don't apologize for their complaints. Avoid accusations, that sort of pattern where, they accuse one thing or they accuse somebody. Try to keep it moving and, of course, take it offline again if you have to. Try to state the facts without comment, right? Or try to let somebody else ask for opinions. What do you think? What are the facts? A facilitator should be asking questions to keep everybody active. You're not giving a speech. You're not giving a lecture, right? You're facilitating their discussion. You're facilitating them to talk. So try to get them to solve it, to come up with positive things, to come up with the attitude by asking questions. You can ask specific questions, or you can assign fact-finding tasks, or ask. You can write down the complaint so we can all see it. And then if it's something, might have to get upper management involved, and then usually when they do and they come back with the verdict, that's the end of it. Of course, if all else fails, you can say, how do you want this discussion to end? I've never used that. I've always said, we can take this offline, or you tell me how we can move forward. And like I said earlier, you can also say, this is not going to get us to move forward. This is not going to get us any deliverables. What is your suggestion to move forward? Some of the same things I mentioned in the beginning you can use with any of these type of folks, right? You also have the person who's undependable. They're indecisive. They won't say no, but they won't follow through, or they won't get something done. How about the person who says, oh, that's my responsibility. That's what I do. And they may object from you assigning it to somebody else, right? But then, of course, they don't do it. They may seem agreeable, but you find out that even if you assign to them, you can't depend on them, and they usually don't do it. So this is, someone who is just not dependable, and he will stall or she will stall the progress forward, moving forward. So try to figure out what their underlying issue is, and some of them are unsolvable. You might have to get somebody else to do it. You might have to go to upper management. But regardless, as a project manager, you go where you have to go and do what you have to do to get past that, because, full speed ahead, like we said. Your focus is getting this done and finishing it up. Try to surface the issues by asking questions to the person who is undependable or is trying to stall things. And try to move it, getting everybody else involved to solve the problem. Ask questions about the situation. Try to get the facts out. And then make sure, you really figure out who's responsible for it. Remember, they work for somebody, so ultimately their boss is responsible that gets done, so you can go to that person as well. You can provide assistance as well. Or, tell them, well, do we have somebody on your team with more bandwidth if you don't have the time? Because we have to get this done. We have deadlines. So there's all sorts of things you can do, but the good thing about it is, you need to think about them now. You need to start thinking this way now. I think all the strategies you come up with, there's one main one, and that's essentially whatever you have to say, whatever you have to do, whatever questions you have to ask, to move through the agenda, to get the product delivered. And I hate to put it this way, but you can't let anybody stop. Whoever tries to stop you, you got to walk right over it, right over them. You got to keep moving and get the group, the work group, the team to do whatever it has to do to get things done. There's no other way. And you have the person who doesn't want to be there. You know, I call them the I want to go home person. You know, they don't listen. They may grunt, give you non-committal responses. They may seem hostile, passive-aggressive, or they avoid taking, issues on anything, and they don't focus. They just, they're looking at something else, doing something else, right? So again, just ask open-ended questions and wait for a response. Sometimes you just have to wait. But don't fill that silence with idle chatter, because then that'll indicate you're not comfortable with the situation, right? Try not to jump in any of these workshops or sessions to any idle chatter. I mean, that's like me breaking off now and saying, hey, my favorite Star Trek is Enterprise. And then you talk 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes about what everybody, if you're going to ask a question like that, if you're going to make a statement like that, then you have to listen to what everybody else's favorite Star Trek franchise is, right? Why they like The Next Generation or Voyager or Discovery or Picard. And you don't want to do that because you can, you remember, it's your job to stick by that agenda and not do any, not consume the time with idle chatter. Of course, every people always want to be social, but it's just not a good thing to do. Again, that's like you're focusing at the end of those coals. That's where you want to be without getting hurt, without anything going wrong. So you have to be careful during these sessions not to jump to idle chatter. Doesn't mean you can't have fun. If things are going real well and you're ahead of schedule and everything's being delivered, well, you can have some fun, sure. It just depends on the situation. But if you're not moving ahead, if things have to get done and you have a lot of problem folks, then the idle chatter is not a good idea. Again, keep asking questions if they're not participating and tell them, we've got to get this done. Any suggestions? And any big problems you can always bring offline. That always works for me. Okay, I understand that. You know what? This is not something we're going to solve here during this meeting. Let's take this offline, but let's jump to the next step in the agenda, or let's finish up this step. We've only got another 30 minutes left. So there's not really a lot about this. It's mostly the same sort of problems, the same sort of people. It's getting beyond the people. Of course, resource problems and scheduling problems, those are a lot easier to deal with, because either you've got the resource or you don't. You're going to get the funding or you're not, and if you're not, you got to figure out ways around it, right? So some of the main things are, remember, you'll never reach your destination if you stop and throw stones at every barking dog. You've got to go beyond that. If you're walking down the street on the sidewalk and there's dogs barking from inside the fences, just keep going. That's what the meeting's like, right? Same sort of thing. Just keep going. I remember Tony Robbins once said, what we can or cannot do, what we consider possible or impossible, is really a function of our true capability. It is more likely a function of our beliefs about who we are. So as a PM, you've got to have that confidence and believe and know that you're going to get to the end of the project successfully. Now, the diagrams that we produced in the beginning, I'm actually there now on a project. I've got the scope diagram done, work breakdown structure, and for the scope, we've got every bubble defined. For the work breakdown structure, which is deliverables, we've got everyone defined, and we've got another week or another 2 weeks with different stakeholders to see if they got anything else to add. I actually took a week to define it and make sure everything was right. Now I'm going to move on to the last 2 weeks of stakeholders. Once I get that all in there, then we'll do the quality check I told you about, and then I'll have my kickoff meeting with all that background to discuss, to go over. I like that better than having a kickoff meeting. Oh, we're starting the project off. Okay, we'll be calling you. Now I've called everybody. Everybody knows it's there. So, hey, we've called you all. Here's what we have. Any changes, any additions? What do you think? Let's get going. And then after that, after the quality check, I'll take that scope diagram and the deliverables. And this project may be different. I'm going to use those bubbles to figure out, obviously I'm going to do the diagram where I put them in all the columns for planning and the bills. But I'm looking at something else. Remember I told you always use your common sense. So I'm looking at maybe I can put these in pillars or columns on what has to be done first and second and third, same as Bill 1, Bill 2, Bill 3. But I'm trying to figure out another diagram to make it easier. There may be none. I may do it the same way I've done. That may work out just fine. But essentially, remember, believe in yourself. All right? Don't let those barking dogs take you astray. And full speed ahead, damn the torpedoes, and just keep going. Guide them, facilitate. Have agendas for every single meeting you have. You shouldn't have any meetings without them. And that's what we're going to do the next episode. I'm going to talk about facilitation and meetings and agendas. We've talked about some of that already, but we'll just focus on that for episode 8. So thanks, everybody. Hope this was helpful for you. Y'all have a great day. See you on the next episode.